Romantic era, you know, the 19th century, was, I guess, sort of an extreme view of that, where death can be beautiful. You know, if you've ever listened to Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet and the love theme in that music, which I will not destroy by singing, but if you'll go listen to it, you can hear the anxiety in the love theme. So he's put together the beauty of love with the anxiety of being separated from the love, which I would consider brokenness. At the end of that piece, the love theme is united with harp music, because in the romantic vision that Tchaikovsky is putting into this piece, he's trying to unite the brokenness of the two lovers, the male and the female, who, you know, God created man and woman in his image. You can think of that as two halves of one being. Perhaps that's why we need each other. But in the music, by bringing in the harps and bringing in the angelic images of the two dead lovers, he's uniting the brokenness of the two. And so he's, by doing that, by contrasting the unity with the division that you've been experiencing in the music, I think it puts an edge on it, and it causes us to remember again the separation we have from home. I think that's why most people are broken. It's that most people have a sense of it, that it's inchoate. They probably can't articulate it. I certainly can't. I try to in my images, of this yearning, this longing to be whole again. And so I think very much a real sense is that, to me, beauty is something that helps heal the brokenness. And one of the ways it does that is by exposing the brokenness. And so beauty sometimes can be painful. That's what I think the romantics of the 19th century were dealing with, you know, the dark heights, the melodrama, if you will. I think all of that is part of it. Love on the Farm is a poem by D.H. Lawrence. Now, he wasn't a romantic, but it's a wonder. It's one of my favorite poems because it unifies or reflects on the similarity between sexual love between a man and a woman and death, because it's about a farmer bringing home a rabbit he's caught and killed for dinner. And the poem is about how, when he comes home and he hugs his wife, embraces his wife, who he loves very much. She relates it to what the rabbit felt like when the rabbit was caught, the pulsing of her heart, the warmth of her fur, that sort of thing. And so he's trying to compare. You have to read the poem, obviously. I'm doing a poor job, but the poetic unifying of the separateness and the feeling, the danger of when it comes together. You know, the image of the Christian image of God and the soul is one of wedding. If you listen to a Bach cantata, I think it's 140, it's all about the parable of the lamps, and where God is the bass voice, as God always is in music, and is dancing with the soul. You can hear the voices coming together because it's like a marriage by Christian imagery. It's the same kind of idea. You have two halves becoming whole, two parts that are broken. Now, the music portraying the soul and the music portraying God is beautiful music, but they're broken in the sense that they're separate until they come together in the duets that they sing in that particular cantata. So I think art often deals with brokenness, separateness, pain, because when we're feeling pain, we're getting in touch with that part of ourselves that is most dissatisfied with our separation, I think.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you think art is or should be beautiful?
I think it's not art if it's not dealing with beauty. That's almost my definition of art. Art can be many things, but if it is not in some manner concerned with beauty, then it's not art, it's polemic. It's something else. That's why most postmodernist art isn't art at all, because it's mockery. The main theme of postmodernism is irony. It's ridiculing authority. It's ridiculing beauty oftentimes. I mean, when Duchamp did his toilet, or when he put the mustache on the Mona Lisa, or when he displayed a bicycle wheel as a work of art, he was making fun of art. And I don't see how anything that makes fun of art, that is in essence making fun of beauty, can possibly be called art. It simply can't be. I think too much postmodernist work by artists views beauty as oppressive. It views it as authority dictating to them, the artist, what they can and cannot do. And that's why they spend so much time having lithographs of Campbell's soup cans. In the world of photography, they do a lot of tableau. They set up absurdist, surrealist situations that they photograph. There's a genre called deadpan, where they take incredibly high craft images of buildings and put them in huge wall-sized murals and present it as art. But to the extent they're not concerned with the beauty of what it is they're projecting, in my mind, they're not doing art. They're making negative comments about what is real art. They're criticizing that which they've become separated from. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a history lesson, but a lot of this came about because of the Industrial Revolution and World War I and World War II, where a lot of what we valued was discredited. And I think that was when we sort of asked God to leave. At least the intellectual elite did. I don't know if you've ever read the letters of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great Lutheran priest, who was executed by Hitler because of his participation in the assassination plot of Hitler. If you read in there, he was a great Protestant theologian, and he was very troubled by the fact that God allowed World War II to happen, allowed the horrors of World War II to happen. And his conclusion, whether you agree with it or not, was that man had asked God to leave, and God honored our free will and left, and this is what we were left with. I don't know if that's true or not, but a lot of times I have the feeling that there's at least an element of truth in that. I had a professor when I was at the Naval Postgraduate School. He had a wonderful course. It was essentially the intellectual history of the 19th century. And he told me that all major philosophical disputes that people have boil down to answering one question. Do you believe in God? Or put another way, do you believe that the material world is all there is? And initially I thought, his name was Professor Tatey, a great professor. And initially I thought, well, that's kind of simplistic. That's not really, can't possibly be true. But as I've ruminated on that over the interceding 20 years, I've concluded that that probably is true. I mean, after all, if I took the picture of the shell that I just showed you, if my attitude towards the shell was that it was simply calcium fortuitously formed by a mollusk, I don't think I would have bothered to take a picture of it. That would be the purely material explanation of it. On the other hand, if I believe that there's more to the shell than its physical existence, that there's more embedded in it, perhaps for my benefit, perhaps not, I don't know. But if I believe there's more to it than that, then I'm going to see more in it than that. As a man is, so he sees. And so I think your attitude towards life, your attitude towards what people consider art, is very much affected by the fact of whether you think material existence is the end-all be-all of it. I think postmodernists answer that question yes. And I think that's why they don't see beauty, why they don't honor beauty, because they just see it as a political statement that people in authority have impressed on them. I think that's really sad. It's twisted. It denies them a lot of pleasure and a lot of reality that I think is there. So I guess that's my answer.
Do you think art tells the truth?
Absolutely. But I think, let me use this example a little bit to show how complicated it might be. Yes, it does, but...
Tell me, would you repeat the sentence? Would you say yes, art does tell the truth?
Yes, art tells the truth, but it's more complicated than most people think, because the truth is more complicated than most people think. When we say the truth, we think of something that's static. It is true that the sun is out today. But the fact of the matter is, the truth is a dynamic thing. It sort of shimmers. It has lots of aspects to it. It isn't simple. We may make it simple because we're people and we have limited resources, but it's not. Let me sort of give you a situation, and I think you'll understand better what I'm talking about. The other day, I have on DVD a gala performance by a great Russian soprano, Anna Netrebko. And she's singing an aria from Norma, which is an opera about the Druids and the Roman conquest of England. Doesn't sound like much of a topic for an opera, but it's a great opera. And the aria she was singing is called Casta Diva, which in English is chaste goddess. And the person singing this in the opera is the high priestess of the Druids, and she's supposed to be a virgin. And so she sings this incantation as a prayer in the opera. Now, what you're going to find out in the opera is that actually she's physically in love with the Roman captain who's in charge of the oppressive Romans, and she's had carnal knowledge of him, if you will. And so there's a second aria that follows where she sings about her love for the Roman soldier. Well, Anna Netrebko sings the two back to back. Sacred and profane love. She puts them together, and because she's a great actress in addition to being a great singer, she totally makes you believe that she's the priestess singing this absolutely beautiful aria about divine love. And then she turns right around and absolutely convinces you in this beautiful aria about physical love. And you're seeing beauty in both of these arias. But if you think about it, it's a total falsehood. She's Anna Netrebko. She's not a Druid priest. She's not in love with a Roman soldier. She's an opera singer who's using her craft to create in me feelings. That's about as false as you can get. That gets back to the sort of the mimetic tradition in art and whether it should be. But by the same token, what she's making me feel is very true. That divine love she's making me feel in the aria is resonating in me, as we've talked about, of that part of me that recognizes in what she's doing divinity. Similarly, in carnal love can be a beautiful part of life. It doesn't have to be bad and sinful and awful, just the reverse. And in this aria, she's portraying it in that way. So it's both truthful and dishonest in the sense that she's not the Druid priestess, but it's very true in the sense that the reason I consider it beautiful, the reason I enjoy watching her do it, as I suspect she's a beautiful person, is that she's eliciting in me that which is beautiful. And so in that sense, it is true. So it's both true and false at the same time. So is beauty truth? Yes, but sometimes the way the craft is used is untruthful to get you to the truthful place, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Terrific. What about, do you think there's a relationship between beauty and good? The good?
Oh, absolutely. Beauty is, I can't say it's the ultimate good, because the ultimate good would be the actual divinity itself, herself, himself, whatever. So that would be the absolute good, where it's all sort of unified. I mean, I think there's a trend in modern science, at least I think it's a trend, where they're starting to emphasize on the emergent qualities of matter. The scientific project, and this was criticized by William Blake routinely, is to reduce things. It's reductionist. And I think in part that's contributed to the problems we have in our modern culture. If your project is to take a thing apart and you get to its constituent parts, it's going to seem a lot less to you than it will when you put it together. And things have emergent qualities, physical things even do. For example, if I take hydrogen, which is a gas, and oxygen, which is a gas, and I ask you to analyze them, you'd say, well, they're a gas and they have certain qualities. Yet if I put them together, they become water. Something with a completely different quality that's emerged, that was latent in these things to begin with, but you'd have never known it unless you put them together. And I think beauty, love, good, truth, these are all sort of reduced versions of the ultimate thing, which is what we're hearkening back to. Beauty is what it is because it contains elements of truth and good, love. Beauty is love. It's a combination of those things. It's more than those things, and those things separated out are more or different than beauty. But because all of these things are emergent qualities that we see as God becomes incarnate in this world, if you will, if you want to think of it that way, those qualities emerge as separate qualities to us. But I don't think ultimately they're separate qualities. I think they're unified back at the beginning in a way that as physical creatures we don't appreciate very well. I think that's why art, successful art, can have the power it has. There's a poem by John Donne. I hope I don't tear up on this, but it's a short poem called Love. And it's about a man who's died and gone to heaven, and he's greeted by an angel in heaven, and he's relating to the I won't go much further. It has a big effect on me because it's a very short poem, but it shows sort of the grandeur of the love that you cannot understand as a material person in this life. C.S. Lewis has said, it's a good thing that divine love is mediated through this material world, because being the creatures we are, we couldn't take the intensity of the love we would feel if it were divine, if we were really trying to experience the divine love. And I think that's true. And so I think beauty, and art in particular, has the power to mediate that for us in a way that it reveals these qualities as being emergent of something greater, and it gives us a hint, if you will, of what's really there if it's properly done. So yes, it's the good, love, truth. All these are aspects of beauty that beauty reveals to us in a desirable form that we long for, I think. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Do you think that beauty is a matter of taste? Is it subjective? Or is there an objective quality to beauty?
Yes and no. I think as a man is, so he sees. If you have spent if you've become interested in art and you spend time learning what it's trying to do, and you've looked at the historical period, you know something about the people creating it, you can appreciate it a lot more than you would if you didn't. That's why I think it's a normal experience, for example, for a young person to think rock and roll is beautiful because they love the driving rhythm, which is in fact something beautiful. And they tend to not appreciate something as complicated as, say, a Baroque era fugue, which requires a lot of background knowledge to appreciate what's going on. So to some extent, it's subjective in the sense that who you are will have an effect on what you perceive to be beautiful. I think the feeling you have of beauty when you experience it is a similar experience. And I think objectively, because beauty deals with being human, I think if you take people from different cultures and you bring them to a similar place in terms of familiarity with the kind of art you're talking about, I think they will all relate to it as a beautiful thing. There's a book by Charles Murray called, I think it's called Human Achievement. And what he tries to do, it goes to your objectivity question, because he's very much fighting the idea that it's all relative. And what he did was he did a study of people who specialize in the study of art around the world, Asian scholars, European scholars, American scholars, and he broke down all of their work by genre, music, painting, sculpture, that sort of thing. And amazingly, he discovered that all of these people who were Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, atheist, no matter what culture they grew up in, they all thought Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart were the greatest composers that ever lived. That there is somehow in our humanity an objective criteria that we use, and that if we are properly attuned to it and properly educated and open to it, we will see it no matter what our cultural background. And I think that's very true. So I think to some degree it's subjective. How we react is conditioned by our culture and the effort we have put into learning and making ourselves familiar with it. But I think it's objective from the standpoint that ultimately it's pointing to an objective, true, beautiful, loving, good divinity. I hope that was clear.
Do you have any thoughts about how we might go about growing in our capacity to experience beauty?
The easy answer is absolutely. It's the easiest thing in the world. Do I think we can convince everybody else of that? I have my doubts. Our culture has become so hard, so jaded, that when you speak of beauty, oftentimes people actually get embarrassed. Because it's easy. The Christians have the idea of grace. I think some people take it wrong, and that sort of God has chosen you and given you grace. This is a complicated theological thing I'm not going to get into. I'm not a theologian. But I think if grace exists, what it is it's a sensitivity to the fact that you have a longing for the divine, whatever you might think that means. And I think one of the reasons moderns have a hard time getting in touch with it is it requires a sort of quietude in your soul, a kind of a silence, because I think beauty doesn't shout, it kind of whispers. I don't know if you can call it powerful and whispering at the same time, but I think that's sort of what it does. And when we clutter our life with video games, loud screaming movies, over-the-top, buffed-up movie stars, when we become overly concerned with the material aspects of our day-to-day living, all of that sort of white noise blankets out the ability of people to be sensitive to beauty, and has gotten to the point where I'm fearful that they don't even acknowledge that they could hear the whispering of beauty in their soul. I worry about that. But I have hope, because I think, John Paul II's first words when he became Pope was, "Be not afraid." And initially I didn't understand that, but as I've thought about it, it strikes me that as a pastoral kind of guy who's used to dealing with reality, he understood that the most important quality wasn't intellectual. It was having the courage to stop what you're doing and listen, and have the hope that when you stopped listening, what you would hear would be something beautiful, not something ugly. And I think to the extent we artists who believe that beauty should be an element of our art, to the extent we put ourselves out there, and in every opportunity we have, preach on about it, like here. In fact, that was one of the reasons I was excited about doing this. If I've sounded like I'm on a pulpit, I sort of am. We people who believe that beauty is important and that art is ought to be an important part of every single person's life, that we should use every opportunity we have to put it out there. And I just hope I sort of don't let the cause down, so to speak, that what I'm putting out there isn't some sort of Ron Johnson patting himself on the back saying, see what a great photographer I am. I hope it's truly beautiful, so that when someone sees it, they stop, if it's just for a second, and go, wow, that color's beautiful, or that form is beautiful, or the tonality of the black and white is beautiful. If I can stop them for just a moment and get them to do that, and if maybe 1 in 10 of them remember it and go, that was really kind of cool, I think I'm going to go down the block to my local art museum or whatever, art will have accomplished something, and we will have accomplished something. Here in Austin, we're a very young college town, and so a lot of our beauty is sort of balladeers and rock and country rock, that sort of thing. It's young people's idea of beauty, and we don't have a very good visual art community, actually. Our major art museum is the Blanton, which has mainly second-rate stuff, but the last Tuesday of every month, the college students at the music school take the lunch hour and they play Bach. They bring in all the instruments and all the beautiful sopranos and stuff, and you can sit in the foyer of the Blanton during your lunch hour, and you can see young people who probably by night go down to 6th Street and go party with everybody else, singing this magnificent, angelic music. And so they must be at least somewhere aware of it. Although it's kind of a strange reaction. I will sometimes go up to one of the singers and thank them, and they look at me oddly, and I tell them, I'm thanking you for bringing some beauty into the world because we need it. And it looks to me like most of the time they've never thought about it that way, and which strikes me as very odd, because you would think someone who is in the school learning to create this kind of magnificent beauty would be constantly being taught by their professors that that's what they're doing. This is a celebration of life. This is a celebration of the beautiful. And they should see themselves as proselytizers for beauty, if you will. And they really don't. It's kind of scary, I guess. But at any rate, young people can do it, so I'm pretty sure we can do it. We just have to keep plugging away. We can change things.
Tell me a little more about what it's going to do for someone to experience beauty. Will it be healing for them? What will it do? How will it enhance their lives?
It'll make them alive. It doesn't simply.
Okay, so
It's simply.
beauty will.
Yes, beauty will. Beauty. If all you're doing is slogging through some kind of troglodyte materialist existence, you're existing. You're not living. You weren't put here to simply dig ditches. And there's no reason on earth why someone who digs ditches or hauls the trash for a living can't be a lot more than that. There's nothing, he's human, he or she is human. And being human, they can respond to that. They can become alive. You may have to do arduous labor to earn your bread and keep a roof over your head and care for your family. But if you don't stop and realize what a beautiful thing your family is, then you're missing the whole point of what you're doing. You will allow the clutter of your life to get in the way of it. I mean, how many people get divorced because they've allowed the clutter of their day-to-day material existence to blind them to this divine creature that they're looking at and arguing with? So I think to the extent you become more aware of beauty, not simply in art, I think art can become a means of pointing out to you that beauty is out there, so to speak, to paraphrase from the X-Files, beauty's out there. To the extent you're more aware of that and you start seeing it in your everyday life, it makes you live. It gives you the courage that when you're discouraged and think, well, I'm getting old. I mean, my gosh, I'm 62. I'm getting old. My life was 3/4 over. It's easy to get despondent. But if you're alive to what beauty gives you, it sort of bucks you up. It gives you the courage to keep seeing and keep working at seeing the beauty that's there and appreciating the real reality behind the physical reality that we as physical beings have a hard time seeing. So I think it's what enables you to truly be alive. And without beauty, I don't think you can be truly alive. Look at Mother Teresa. She was working in the dimmest, darkest, dankest, most awful place you could possibly, I can't imagine it as an American, living among the poor and starving in Calcutta, disease-ridden people in Calcutta. What kind of a place wouldn't make most people so depressed they'd blow their brains out? If this is the destiny of humanity, this is what it's all about, yet her religious insight, that inspiration she had when she was a young person that enabled her, apparently was just a glimpse to see what was there inside of us, even just as a glimpse, formed the course she needed to go through life and go through that kind of a job. That's the power of beauty. That's the power, because it's driven by the divinity behind the beauty. And so I think it contributes to the courage of people doing good. It contributes to the courage of telling truth to power. It contributes to understanding the beauty of a loving relationship inside your family. It's the fuel that does that. And so I think it's really critical that artists bring beauty into the world and that the people appreciate the beauty that's in the world.
Cool. Some people have said that beauty is humbling. Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, very much. I think we can be full of ourselves, even when we're being down on ourselves. Depression is a form of self-centeredness, if you think about it. It's an overextension of who you are, focusing on what your problems are instead of focusing outside of yourself. It's the easiest thing to do. I can be narcissistic, probably more so than most people, and it's a vice, and it's a vice for a reason. It makes you inward, and it puts too much importance on yourself. I think beauty makes you understand how much is outside of you, and how beyond your ability to express it is.